Yeah, there it is. Ophelia, okay? Anything with a philia on the end is considered a fetish, right? There's a whole list of philias. You have no idea how many there are. Mummification is one of Mistress's favorites. Now, this is not a kink for everybody. This takes some serious stuff of how to really do this. For one, you really need to understand your partner's breathing before you wrap somebody up in saran wrap and tape. That's number one. I've done mummification where it's it had nothing to do with motherhood, of course. Instead, it's about mummies in the ancient Egyptian sense. People with a mummification kink get turned on by wrapping their partners. I really enjoy this fetish. This is one that I think I can safely exhibit, that I've done plenty of times in my life. And I love to wrap up submissives like mummies. Not only with plastic wrap or saran wrap or pallet wrap I like to use, but I also like to put over the pallet wrap a PVC tape. And I would put like different colors for different things, like different events, or, you know, making some sort of, how shall I say, design on someone. They're all fun. I like to do all these different things. Mummification is probably one of my personal fetishes, and honestly, I like it a lot because I have more control over submissive that way. I think for me, I'm able to really understand that person better by watching their breathing. So when you're wrapping them correctly, you're going to be wrapping them when they have exhaled their breath, okay? And then you're not going to wrap again until they breathe. So it takes a lot of patience to kind of read someone's body language. And you should not do mummification if you've never done it before. You should have someone who has done it before to show you the correct way. So basically what it does is, okay, you're going to be wrapping someone up and mummifying them. You could either put a gas mask on their face, like I've done in the past, where you can blow smoke up there or fart. People do. I've done all different types of things. I've had a gas mask on a submissive once that I mummified. And me and another mistress, or a bunch of mistresses, smoked some marijuana. We smoked some cigarettes, and we blew some smoke up there. Person was happy. Then there was another time. I was at this other BDSM event with my friend Lady Candace, and we decided to take this fella's respirator hose and fart in his respirator hose. Myself and 3 other doms. And this poor guy, he was like mummified to a chair. Now, he also had in a butt plug that was like remote controlled, and Lady Candace put it in this fella's tush. It was at one of her private play parties. And she gave me the remote, and she said, control away. So throughout the whole night, myself and a bunch of mistresses were passing this remote control back and forth, and we would, like, walk past him and, like, shock his ass. While he was mummified, his respirator hose was often, other doms were, like, farting and burping and, like, doing all kinds of disgusting bodily things to this fella while he was mummified. But after the end of the night, I think they left him there. He was mummified on the chair for like 2 days. Apparently he was wearing a diaper underneath, so he was able to go to the bathroom and stuff. And the Lady Candace told me when she took him off the chair and unmummified him, he had the best time. He goes, wow, I've never been assaulted, humiliated, and degraded by so many doms in my life. Like, that's what you get for volunteering yourself at a mummification party. So it was pretty interesting. Now, one may ask, impact play. We always talk about this. It's being hit in a consensual erotic context releases endorphins, which can give participants a real rush, right? Basically, it's a fancy name for any type of spanking, paddling, or caning, right? But heavy-duty impact play has a totally different name called corporal punishment. This is when you have your submissive either strung up on a St. Andrew's cross or a spanking bench, or they're restrained to some degree. And you're basically just whipping and paddling them and giving them any type of implement they think they can handle. And these are usually done with typical pain sluts. And what I mean a pain slut is somebody who's a complete masochist, who can stand there and take a wallop good beating, or, oh, well, I don't even like to use that word, a beating, a heavy-duty impact play session to where they are like, they don't care, they don't whine, they just like say, keep it coming. Like, they can withstand a hell of a beating. These are people or slaves or submissives who have been thoroughly trained in heavy-duty corporal punishment, heavy-duty impact play. I myself, throughout my 31 years of BDSM, back in 2011, when I was living in upstate New York, I had a submissive contact me on FetLife who lived in Maine. And he said that he would be willing to drive to upstate New York for me to unleash on him a heavy-duty corporal punishment session. Now, mind you, this guy, when I first spoke to him on the phone, he seemed like he could really take a walloping just by me talking to him. He, served other doms in the past. And I actually had him in my old house upstate, and I had him in my dungeon on my St. Andrew's cross. And let me tell you, I whipped the hell out of this guy to where he, I never heard a human make sounds like this in my life. And I asked him, I said, do you want me to stop? And he said, no. He's like, I didn't give you the safe word. So at the time, my safe word was red. And I'll tell you, I literally black and blue this fella. He was a big guy. He was like 6'6" and probably like 300 pounds. And he just fucking stood there and took every wallop that I fucking gave him. And some of the other ones, I think when I whipped him with my signal whip, it split his back open. And I actually had to call the scene because of the fact that this guy probably would have let me beat the hell out of him and put him on his deathbed if I didn't stop. In a situation like that, the mistress or the master has to be the one to decide whether a submissive has had enough. Usually you can tell by somebody's body language, right? But in this particular sense or story, this guy was he told me he was a heavy-duty pain slut. I didn't realize how heavy-duty he was until he was in front of me, and until after an hour and a half of me whipping, spanking, paddling, electrocuting. I even did fire play on him. And he seemed to be fine. But once I used the last of my whips, and I used the signal whip, and I got him in his upper back, and I saw his skin literally break open and start bleeding, I was like, okay, I think I'm going to call red, and I'm going to, make this guy stop, because, he probably wanted more, but I had stopped the scene, and he asked me why, and I told him. And he's like, yeah. He's like, I was just about to shout out red to you. But in the interim, he was really getting his jollies off by me whipping him. And I had spoken to him probably a couple of weeks after, or a week or two after he initially went home after that. And he said he couldn't sit down for weeks because of me. So every time he sat down, he thought of great old Mistress Candy making her mark on his body. And he was proud of it. He went to another BDSM event and showed off his marks, and he was very proud of his bruising. And when someone asked him who did it, he told them, and they're like, oh, I know who she is. Wow, she did that to you? And he was like, yeah. And they're like, wow, she's got Mistress Candy has some pretty heavy hands. I've been spanked by her myself. He went to some event and ran into somebody that I knew, which was kind of funny. And, but interesting. So yeah, whenever you're in a scene like that, heavy-duty corporal punishment, and somebody does not use a safe word, it is up to the mistress or master to read that sub's body language and see whether they've had enough. And if you have to call it, then you call it. If you don't wait for the submissive to call it, because something terrible could happen. So at least with me, I know boundaries and whatnot, and I know what should and shouldn't be done. But somebody who's new to the lifestyle, shouldn't be doing that to somebody if they don't really have experience with it. So if you want to know more about corporal punishment, you should really find somebody who is an extreme pain slut that'll be willing to let you practice on them, so you get the kind of feel for it before you go and do it to someone else. But then again, these are all things that I just tell people because I want everybody to be safe, sane, and consensual and not have any bullshit while you're doing some BDSM type stuff, because there's a fine line between BDSM and the law and what you can and what you can't do. So, make sure your partner consents to it, even if you have to have them sign a paperwork. I even like to get copies of their license just so I have it for safekeeping. I also have them do a medical check because to make sure they're physically fit. They're going through like some physical stuff with me to make sure that they're capable of handling such debauchery and craziness, right? So now we're going to consensual non-consent. Okay, now this is kind of an interesting subject. Consensual non-consent is a kink which someone is turned on by the idea of being taken away or taken by their partner while they pretend to say no. So sometimes it's referred to as rape play fantasy, or it's a kink that's pre-agreed upon and must be carefully negotiated between all parties involved, right? So basically this is like a consensual non-consent type play, or rape fantasy or rape play. I don't really do any of them, but there are people who like to be damsel in distress, kidnapped by their partner, bondage tied into a closet, being kind of tortured and ostracized for a couple of hours. And then, they have sex in a weird type of manner, and then the scene is done. This rape play fantasy can go on for days sometimes. Some people take it like too far. So just make sure when you are doing this with someone, you are consenting, and even though it's consensual non-consent, it is still consensual and you still have to consent to it, right? So it's kind of interesting. There are people who, they have control over the situation, but there are many people who have not experienced sexual trauma, and they also enjoy this type of play. So it can be something that you could try to do. Like I said, it's consensual, non-consensual rape fantasy play. Something I don't really participate with, but there are people that do it, right? And then we have financial domination, findom. It's often a fetish, but there are people who live like this. Okay, it can be a kink. It involves giving over total control of one's finances to someone else, or being kept on a strict budget, or being ordered to purchase certain things. If this kink is for you, if the idea is giving over so much control in such an important part of life turns you on, you can explore it by beginning with a trusted partner or introducing a financial element to your sex life. For instance, one could say that 10% of your monthly income must be spent on sexy presents for your partner, and go from there. Or, in findoms, there are financial doms who are online who will take money from men, called wallet raping or rinsing. Rinse, wash, and repeat, as one would say. I've done this before, so I know all about this. When I was younger, I used to do financial domination. I actually had 3 or 4 pay pigs that were top-notch payers. One fella, I think I made a lot. I won't say how much, but I made a lot of money off this man. I was blackmailing him for 3 years. And what his little stupid blackmail fetish was is that he liked to cross-dress, and he was married, and his wife didn't know about it. So he was blackmailing me to keep my mouth closed. So what I would do is I would send him daunting tasks of him having to go out in public and buy lingerie and women's attire. Sometimes I would send him out in public doing this, and then he would have to take photos of himself and send it to me with his receipts of all of his lady clothes that he bought. Then while he was out and about, I would tell him to go to the mall and buy Mistress a gift card or something. And he did. He would send me the gift card in the mail. And it wasn't just like a $50. He was sending me like $1,000 gift cards. And anything I wanted, I had this fella's credit card information. I was using his credit card. He'd email me, Mistress, did you use my card today? Of course I did. I said, do I need to explain myself to you? And he says, absolutely not, Mistress. I was just wondering because I just raised my credit limit. This fella, I blackmailed him twice in 6 years. Each time was 3 years in the making. I made tons of money off of him. I must have spent tons of money on his credit cards. Then I had another